Toy maker Hasbro is in a whole heap of trouble. They are quickly landing the entire company in the discount toy bin. But what if we told you that Disney is largely in charge of having driven in the final nail in Hasbro's coffin? We'll tell you about it right now on That Park Place. Hello folks, welcome back to the happiest place here on YouTube. We're having a dandy of a time. We've got Lauren Connor and Tommy Tables here to walk us through what's going on with Hasbro, and we sure are glad that you're here with us. Thank you so much for being so supportive. You truly are the gigawatts. Let's get to the news, and this comes to us via a source named Tommy Tables. Who's that guy? Sending us this image here. We've got from TFH or TF Hype Guy talking about canceled figures, and it says, according to JT Prime 17, these Legacy and Studio Series listings have disappeared. It goes on to talk about some of these Hasbro entities. And then if we go over here to this post that we also see from Twitter/X, this is from Ollie's Dungeons & Dragons buyout. Folks, our inventory is stocked with tons of Dungeons & Dragons stuff like creature packs, dungeon builders, board games, and more at up to 80% off. Tommy, why is this such a big deal rather than just a normal sale that you might see at this time of year?
Well, this is supposed to be the brand that is selling gangbusters for Hasbro at the moment. In their most recent reports, they were basically being buoyed by both Magic the Gathering products and Dungeons & Dragons. And to see that much product of Dungeons & Dragons at Ollie's is, I don't know if it's the canary in the coal mine, but it's certainly not a pleasant thing to see, and certainly I don't think it's something that Hasbro intended. It's a bit of a juxtaposition, because we're being told that Dungeons & Dragons is just on fire, and yet it's on fire sale at Ollie's. Is that a bad joke? That's a bad joke. I'm sorry.
Well, one thing that's definitely not on fire is Star Wars merch, Marvel merch. We talked about this, by the way, on the Pro Channel back in November. We talked about the fact that we were hearing from sources that Disney was about to have one of its worst retail seasons of all time for the holidays of 2023. And lo and behold, after we got through the holidays, suddenly Hasbro was having trouble. And Hasbro, of course, is one of the key licensing partners of Disney. Now, folks out there, you probably know there's been some switcheroos when it comes to the channels and all that that we are associated with. We're not going to go into detail here, but I do want to say that sometimes things just work out really, really well. And in this case, we heard from a source that we had not received any info from in a very long time. And it put a smile on my face to see that at this moment, this source reached back out. It's someone who is highly, highly positioned in the toy industry. And they brought us an exclusive. We're very excited now to get into that exclusive. And I'm going to be bringing this also for the very first time to the panel for them to react. I'm going to be reading this message that was sent my way, and this source has been a part of some of the biggest reveals we've ever had on the channel. We're so glad to have them back. A special thank you as they're watching this. And as I read this, I'm going to be actively scrubbing this as I speak of anything that could identify. So here we go, folks. Here's what it says. It says, okay, I've seen your videos on the damage destroyed Star Wars brand and wounded Marvel brand did to Hasbro. Bang on. To be clear, many, many other factors played a part in the Hasbro downfall. Supply chain, badly managed retail pricing, loss of talent, bad hirings, and many, many other factors played a role. I'm going to skip the next paragraph because it goes into talking about the history of this person's career and why they know the stuff they know. You don't need to know that. It says, so you can't fairly say Disney killed Hasbro, but you can say that it gave the critical blow. Not that long ago, Hasbro was structured under division headings that included board games, Parker, and MB. What is MB? That's
Milton
what
Bradley.
is MB? Milton Bradley. Thank you. I couldn't get that out. Consolidated. And wait for it, girls and boys toys. Girls, boys, what? You mean they're not the same? I'm shocked, says the source, humorously. Anyways, he goes on. Games, because of the GM and boys toys, were the company. And Star Wars was the key to boys' toys from 1977 to earliest Disney acquisition. Forget Tonka and other smaller brands, except Transformers and Joe, talking about G.I. Joe, depending on the timeline. Recent G.I. Joe versus 80s and 90s, the advantage on those were that they are royalty free, a key to their strong total line profit, which is apparently old Hasbro lingo, total line profit. So if any of you out there are watching and you worked for Hasbro once upon a time, you're going to say, oh, well, that's a real source. By the way, Hasbro lining up with Disney is actually a recent thing from the perspective of an old-timer, such as this individual, mostly brought on by Disney buying IPs. Internally, Hasbro was never close to Disney, who were Mattel, but Hasbro had their own brands in Star Wars. So for Mattel, they were structured around Barbie and Hot Wheels. Hasbro was structured around games and boys' toys, and then you let the two fight it out in the market. And fight they did, which grew toys as a category and allowed for Toys R Us through those decades to thrive. Anyway, goes on the source, Marvel surged much more recently, and as such was never the key to Hasbro prosperity that Star Wars was. Still huge, of course, but nothing compared to what actual Star Wars was and generated on the licensing side. Star Wars was, well, incredible. I don't think pop culture licensing will ever see anything like it. Lauren, I want to go to you. I'm going to pause on reading the rest of this for just a moment. Again, it's an exclusive from someone who has worked at the highest levels of the toy industry. Lauren, you've watched the Star Wars brand be diminished. You've watched the merchandising fall. This source has told us before that there was a time when big brand retailers would have to park huge crates of just a single action figure, just Han Solo, park it at another location to be on hand once the Han Solo dolls sold out or action figures sold out at the big box retail location, and then they would bring it in from the holding grounds. Lauren, what is your assessment right now of Star Wars merchandise and what's going on in that area?
It's pitiful. Shelf space is at a minimum. The articulation and quality of the sculpts is far down from what it was at its peak. It is primarily focusing on, right now, characters from the Disney Plus shows that have not been doing particularly well. You don't see vehicles and playsets like you once did back in the day. It's all just the action figures, and I think they're focusing more on their Black Series line, which is some of their larger format figures, as well as some of their premium cosplay kind of stuff.
And those are aimed at adult collectors, correct?
Correct.
And that's because largely the children are no longer participatory in the brand.
Yeah, Star Wars has not successfully passed the torch on to the next generation. That is why it is likely going to die at this point.
And it's also, folks, it's why they desperately need to get Grogu back to exciting kiddos. They need the Mandalorian movie to succeed. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, considering that we have talked about on the Pro Channel and on thatparkplace.com that we have a source, and, really it puts us out on a limb, but the source says that there's not going to be a season 4 of The Mandalorian. Now, do I know if that's true or not? No. But my gosh, we're getting towards the end of February. The movie is supposed to begin shooting in June, and I still haven't heard anything about the season beginning production. So every day we keep going, it's more and more likely. But I think that indicates where Star Wars is. Continue with this message, though. It says, the destruction of Star Wars as a boy brand, the wounding of Marvel as a boys brand, the neutering of G.I. Joe due to ideology, etc., basically wiped young boys from the toy aisles, leaving the adult segments to generate the brand dollars, thereby chopping off the legs of Star Wars, most notably. No kids, well, good luck on sustainability. Evergreen, and I need to pause here and explain, evergreen refers to franchises and properties that they're popular all year long, they're popular every year, and they're not dependent on new content being released because they're that popular. They're the most sought-after franchises in the world. They're the most sought-after intellectual properties in the world. Evergreen, think 1 month old wilting Christmas tree. Oh, and don't think collectors haven't fallen away from these brands as well. Tommy, has that been your assessment of the market as well? Do you think that the collectors are growing weary?
100%. And a lot of that is because of the fact that they are just gouging collectors, myself included. My wallet screams in pain all the time. Lauren had previously mentioned that one of the signs of decay with the Star Wars line was the fact that you don't really see these vehicles on the shelves anymore. And it's 100% true. You used to be able to see vehicles in all sorts of shapes and sizes, ranging from, the little speeder bikes all the way up to the large AT-ATs. But that's not the case. And when they do make new vehicles, for example, Hasbro just recently announced a new retail vehicle. It's the E-Wing, which is a popular starfighter from the expanded universe and was featured in the Ahsoka movie, the TV shows rather. Really, really cool design. Something that I think, hardcore collectors and new fans alike would like. And it's I think it's over $100 US at the moment for this vehicle, which I would say even about 10, 15 years ago would have probably cost you about $30 or $40. Now, they've added some paint additions to it. There's a little bit more sculpting to it, but every time they release a new vehicle these days, it is expensive. The Mandalorian, his N1 starfighter with Grogu, that was released not too long ago as well. It was a new mold for Hasbro. And up here in Canada, that set you back nearly $200. And so that is not sustainable. And it's clearly aimed at the collector. And the funny thing is, I remember at a time when you're getting on these fun little arguments on message boards with people and whatnot, there was a certain segment of the fandom who constantly berated the collector and said, the collector's market comprises such a minuscule amount of the overall purchases for these products that Hasbro isn't even aware of us. Forget the self-importance. You collectors are just, the weird guy in the corner that no one's asked to dance. And yet now the tables, sorry, that's a pun. The tables have literally turned. Hasbro is relying on collectors mainly now. They're really, really gearing towards us. And they're also realizing that now is the best time that they have to be able to gouge us for the maximum amount of cash out of our wallets. In the Transformers line, for example, they have this product now called Transformers Legacy, and it's hot on the heels of a number of other waves, the Siege, Earthrise, Kingdom, and so on and so forth. The big thing here is that they are going back to the well, and they are basically doing every single Transformer figure that came out in the 80s in an upgraded and modern way. And the sense that I get from these toys now, having collected Transformers my entire life, is that once this is done, this is it. Like, they are tapping the well. And after we see all these figures created or recreated in plastic form, we're probably not going to see them again, because all the collectors will either have gotten too old or died or just gone bankrupt. And I think they're realizing that they have had that generational loss, that they've failed to capture the new generation, like Lauren said. And I mean, in my case, it's true. Like my boys couldn't care less about the stuff that I have, the Star Wars, the Transformers, all of that. They don't. And I could go into so many reasons for as to why, but it boils down to the fact that they in their greed, they thought that they could expand their reach to include both genders, I guess. Like, there's no such thing as a difference between boys and girls, and that overreach cost them their built-in audience. And we've seen this sort of story play out repeatedly with Marvel, with Disney, with Lucasfilm. No one's
there's another aspect to this too, though, and that's not just that they are trying to expand their reach beyond what was their traditional market. I think they had this idea that no matter what, the collectors are always going to pay for whatever we put out because they're addicted and they cannot help themselves. And they're finding out that's not the case, that we won't be taken for granted, and we're not just going to shell out for substandard product. If you have a good story to attach things to, that's what gets people excited for the product. It's years ago, I wrote an article about the parallels between the downfall of Star Wars in the modern day and what happened with Transformers when the marketing executives decided that they were going to kill the G1 cast to try and make way for a whole new shelf full of toys. And they had no idea what was going to happen in the kids market when they killed Optimus Prime. And they failed to learn that lesson. They're now having to relearn it now. And I don't think they're getting it. And the problem is, the way that kids play now is not the way that they played then. No. Action figures and toys are not the market they once were. What kids are interested in are games.
Mm-hmm. And to make this salient for those out there who are wondering, well, what does it matter if one toy manufacturer goes down? Somebody else will take that mantle and they'll move forward. What I would say is, the big takeaway here is that we have often talked about how there's a disconnect between Main Street and Wall Street when it comes to the Walt Disney Company. And right now, Wall Street is very keen on Disney and Main Street is very much not. So you might say, well, what are you talking about, Pro? And the answer to that is Wall Street is buying up Disney. No financial advice here. We're not giving that at all. But Wall Street likes Disney. We've seen that after that last earnings call. Main Street says no to Disney, and loudly, vociferously. They're not going to see the Disney movies. They're not subscribing to Disney Plus. And that results in a lot of trickery that has to happen to make those numbers look as good as they possibly can. Not working. Take a look at their most recent Pixar releases, which are averaging somewhere between $100 and $200 per screen per day, which is just terrible. So you might say, okay, what does that have to do with Hasbro? And the answer is simple. Hasbro is the receiving end of Disney's failures, right? So as Disney's brands fail, Disney somehow remains invincible to that for the time being. There are many factors in that. We could spend 30 minutes explaining it. The partnerships, however, they don't remain invincible. And so Hasbro is the direct beneficiary of these failures, and it's destroying Hasbro. Let me finish this story up real quick and get you guys your takes on it. First of all, inside this message, it says, we don't have time to cover Transformers. It's another story for another day. Same thing with Dungeons and Dragons, although it is highly associated with ideology and modern messaging. But to summarize here at the end, the source says that Mattel was always known as the girls' brand. Hasbro was always known as the boys' brand. What destroyed Hasbro was ignoring the supermajority of their consumers. And it doesn't matter if it offends, it's the truth. Hasbro, by the way, doing the same thing that Disney has fully committed to, decided to take those brands and to move away from the supermajority desires of their consumers. And according to the source, it says that you might feel sorry for Hasbro, you might, wish all of them well, but all through this process, they seem to have been at least tacitly on board with the DEI demands of Disney directions. And so that's how we've landed here. We know there was some pushback. We've heard about that. We've reported on Hasbro, essentially begging, we have to have Luke Skywalker in something. Give us Luke Skywalker in his heroic form in something, please. And of course, that fell on deaf ears. They were allegedly told that those characters, Luke Skywalker, Han, Leia, etc., that they are cobwebbed. They're used for cameos and nothing more. But there is no love lost for this source talking about Hasbro and the decisions that were made. But folks, this is just the first message of two. There's another one, and we're going to go into higher resolution exclusives there. But I want to get the take of both of you, because I think this is really onto something, which is Disney still continues forward. They've got a number of ways they're doing that, and most of it is pointing to something shiny in the future and saying, oh, look, here's ESPN, and we're going to integrate betting into ESPN directly. So we'll raise your kids, and then we'll get them addicted to this. And that's got the investors all going, oh, goody. And then Disney points and says, and by the way, look at these profit margins. We increased them because we couldn't make any content last quarter because of the strikes, but we won't mention the strikes. And the investors go, oh, goody. Hasbro, though, and some of these other partners with Disney, they're taking the full brunt of it. So, guys, how much longer does this last before people catch on to Disney that they also have emptied out the popularity of their generation driving content? And how much longer until people realize, Disney has forgone the supermajority of their consumers, and they're not coming back?
When it comes to the toys, they're done, because all that they have that they can produce for or whatever is on Disney Plus, and nobody's buying vehicles. Or
you have already pre-ordered Agatha. We know it. You want that Agatha action figure.
I'm just saying that there's going to be no new content that they can produce anything for within the next year, and that's all that Star Wars has got. I mean, but
Lauren, they're going to get away from lightsabers. We're going to have Night Sister wands. They're going to have little light up spell effects. It'll be so cool.
Good luck with that. I mean, the one big thing, the one big thing that they're going to try and pitch is the Acolyte. And I guarantee you, if you think that the High Republic is bad, it's going to be worse. I honestly believe the Acolyte's going to be worse than the High Republic. And there's no coming back from that.
Lauren, clearly they hate it when we say this, but we're never going to stop saying it. They love Leslie Headland. She gets to make the Acolyte. They hate Gina Carano. Folks, who are you more like? Are you more like Gina Carano or are you more like Leslie Headland? If you don't know who Leslie Headland is, look her up. Tommy, your thought on that?
I mean, I think that, oh, geez. I think my personal prediction is that I believe that the Acolyte will be to Lucasfilm what the Marvels was to the MCU, quite honestly. And I'm almost morbidly curious to see it when it hits. And
there's a Wookiee in a leotard. That's the I may ironically buy that figure just because this is like holiday special level bad.
So, Lord, you're gonna show that to your son to say this is the antithesis of everything good, son.
I cannot wait for the video where they overdub the Wookiee with I can't think of his name now. Richard Simmons.
Oh gosh,
you do working out with the Wookiee. You know, I think it's going to be just.
I thought you were going to say Rick. I thought you were going to say we're going to get Rick rolled. The Wookiee comes out, and then all of a sudden, never going to give you up, starts playing. You know?
That would be preferable.
Oh man, it would be preferable. All right, folks, we have reached the end. All hearts and mind clear, guys. Are we good? Any last words on this one?
Well, I just want to say really quickly that the thing with Hasbro, and I know Culture Casino had written about this did a video on this, which was really fantastic, and you should go check it out. But today I was just sort of commenting on the numbers that came out of Hasbro, and you look at what they've reported. Their franchise brands revenue was $843.7 million. It was down 10%. Their non-Hasbro branded film and TV revenue, which are those items that they license, like Star Wars, Marvel, $139.3 million, down 54%. That is just wild. And I like Hasbro. Hasbro has been in the toy world, and this might be a bit controversial to say, but Hasbro is basically the Disney of the toy world. Yes, you've got Mattel. Yes, you've got McFarlane. You've got a lot of other sort of smaller companies and the like. But Hasbro has, in the last couple of years, through a lot of really, smart moves by its previous CEO, they basically clawed their way up to the top of the kingdom. Now, yes, Mattel still has Barbie and whatnot, but Hasbro really had that profile, that popularity going forward. And now to sit here and talk about their potential bankruptcy, quite frankly, or them filing filing Chapter 11, like to even entertain this a year ago is incredible. And yet that's where we are. And so I really, really hope that it doesn't happen. I love Hasbro products. I've been collecting them forever. But you're right, Pro. They forsook. They foresought. My apologies. They foresought their audience, and this is what they're reaping, and it's the type of damage that's been done to them isn't something that just happens over a couple of months or the like. This is going to get worse before it gets better for them, and that's really unfortunate.
Absolutely.
There is an arrogance here to what happened with Hasbro.
Oh,
I think that they did rise so rapidly. I think they got a little too big for their britches and felt the same way that Disney did, that they could begin preaching to their audience and shoving to them whatever they wanted. A lot of that is reflected in the Dungeons and Dragons stuff, which is just ridiculous that they're doing what they've done there. They're like Icarus. They've gotten too close to the sun, and now they're getting burned for it.
That's absolutely it.
Canary, meet coal mine. All right, folks, we appreciate your support so much. Thank you for sticking with us. Thank you for continuing to search us out as we bring you all the news that should be fun, explaining entertainment, keeping you ahead of the culture curve, and yes, indeedly doodly, even here on this channel, pure, unadulterated excellence every day. Unstoppable excellence. And we won't ever cease in doing so. Folks, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button. Share, subscribe, click it, stick it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. Drop a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts. And we must wrap up, folks, because it's time to get ready for an all-new show here on That Park Place, debuting at noon Eastern, Amateur Hour. So stop on by, and who knows, maybe a pro will show up. It's only apropos for the amateurs. All right, folks, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, keep having fun, and stay tuned to That Park Place.
Thanks for watching That Park Place News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.